Bienvenido a Piedra Curiosa, the site for Spanish language learning. In the last video, we looked at a holistic general picture of preterite versus imperfect. Today we're going to take a look at a few specific differences between preterite and imperfect, focusing specifically on defining actions as specific or ambiguous and the parameters that shape them. There are two parameters that define both preterite and imperfect that you should understand by the end of today's lesson. The measure of quantity, or how many times did the action occur? Is it clear or ambiguous? And the measure of time. How long did the action occur? Is this clear or ambiguous? Before I get started, I'd like to caution that the line between preterite and imperfect can sometimes be ambiguous itself, and in some cases either preterite or imperfect is acceptable. Having said that, there are some guidelines that will push you in the right direction. Let's start out with a specific quantity of actions versus an ambiguous quantity of actions. On the left side, I have Tony, and on the right side stands Jose. Let's say that Tony jumped 3 times. Meanwhile, Jose just starts jumping and nobody is really counting how many times he jumps. Because we have exact information regarding how many times Tony jumps, we're going to use preterite when we describe her past actions. Tony saltó 3 veces. In contrast, I have no idea how many times Jose jumped. I didn't count or time him, but I do know that Jose was jumping a lot in class. Because my information is unknown or inexact, I would typically use imperfect to describe Jose's actions. Jose saltaba en clase. Let's take a closer look at this last sentence. How could I make it preterite? If I started to add either one of my parameters to this sentence, I'm pushing myself closer to preterite. I could add a parameter of quantity and say that Jose jumped 4 times. Now it's preterite. Let's use our second parameter here, the measure of time. If I change my sentence to Jose jumped in class for 15 minutes, I can also use preterite. Even though I don't know exactly how many times he jumped. Jose saltó por 15 minutos. Would you use preterite or imperfect, and why? Tony typically completed her homework. Pause the video if you need time to work through it. As the sentence is written, I would choose to use imperfect because of the sentence's ambiguity. Típicamente, Tony cumplía su tarea. How could I add to this sentence to make this preterite? I could define the quantity of times that Tony completed her homework. For example, Tony cumplió su tarea lunes, miércoles y jueves. 1, 2, 3. a finite number of times. Or I could define the amount of time that it took Tony to complete her homework. Tony cumplió su tarea todas las noches durante 8 años. Even though 8 años is a very long period of time, and not just a snapshot of time, we will still use preterit because it is a defined period of time. As a review today, we learned that we can make a sentence preterit by including the following parameters: a specific quantity of actions. For example, Tony jumped 4 times. Or by including a specific quantity of time. For example, Tony did her homework in a half an hour. If the quantity or the time is not clearly defined, then most likely the sentence will use imperfect. In the next video, we'll take a look at subsequent actions versus simultaneous actions. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. Hasta luego.